In my last video, Infant Baptism and Man on Fire, Sketchy Math, we explored the logical problems that arise when you claim baptism is essential for salvation, and yet give it to infants who can't choose it. But where did this doctrine actually come from? Was it taught by Christ, by his apostles? Or was it the result of centuries of slow, doctrinal drift by well-meaning but misguided men? To answer that, let's walk through this timeline and trace how the doctrine of infant baptism evolved. There is no biblical evidence that Christ ever taught the baptism of infants, nor was baptized as an infant. Every command is tied to belief, repentance, and covenant, none of which an infant can do. Early Christian thinkers like Tertullian spoke out directly against infant baptism. He warned it could do more harm than good and should be reserved for those who could understand and commit. Hippolytus and Origen, however, begin to diverge. Origen, steeped in allegory, said infants should be baptized for the remission of sins, even though that logic rests on a doctrine of original sin that wasn't fully formed yet. Irenaeus of Lyon introduced ideas about inherited sin and unity with Adam, opening the door to justifying infant baptism theologically. And Gregory of Nazianzus seemed conflicted, sometimes supporting infant baptism, other times urging caution. There's no consensus, only growing speculation. On the other side of the world, the Book of Mormon records a very different story. Mormon, writing around 385 AD, condemned infant baptism outright. He called it a mockery before God, and Moroni preserved that teaching, writing in Moroni chapter 8 that God's mercy covers children, and baptizing them denies both faith and understanding. This American continent experienced 2 centuries of unity, miracles, and peace. No doctrinal councils, no theological fights, just truth, unchanged and uncorrupted. Back in the old world, things escalated. Augustine made infant baptism central, teaching that all are born guilty due to Adam, and unbaptized infants are lost. But not everyone agreed. Pelagius insisted infants were innocent. He was condemned. The Council of Miletus and the Council of Carthage sided with Augustine, not by revelation but by vote. From here on, disagreement was no longer welcome. The councils began to codify infant baptism, declare opposition heresy, and excommunicate dissenters like Pelagius and Cælestius. The debate became a battle. Theology became law. Jerome, Cyprian, and others doubled down. The doctrine of original sin solidified, not because Christ revealed it, but because powerful bishops and councils enforced it. What was once a disputed idea became enforced tradition. So what do we see? Infant baptism was not taught by Christ or his apostles. It developed over centuries, not by revelation but by reasoning and resistance. Even faithful thinkers disagreed, and those who resisted it often paid the price. And most importantly, the apostasy wasn't limited to one land. On both continents, truth was lost, just in different ways. Would the God who calls for personal faith really tie your salvation to something your parents did before you could walk, talk, or believe? Even Paul taught the Corinthians about baptism for the dead, hardly a passive ritual. And strikingly, the one practice Jesus introduced that the Pharisees didn't criticize was baptism. Look for any criticism of baptism from the opposition party. You won't find it. Why? Because it was already part of ancient Jewish tradition, long before they apostatized and their priesthood was lost. Yet today, modern blue-pilled consensus Christianity rejects these biblical patterns, and substituted a practice that Jesus and his authorized witnesses never taught and would never have allowed: infant baptism. Thank you for watching. If you want to do your own research, check out the Substack link in the description for more information. Like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts below. Then come back next time for more things you thought you knew that simply aren't so.
This is the way.